Science already has almost everything ready for a zombie apocalypse. All that's left is to press a button. It may sound like something out of a movie, but the truth is that science is getting closer and closer to creating something like what we see in zombie stories. Viruses, parasites, and even genetic engineering are already showing that controlling behavior can stop being fiction and become reality. Imagine a virus that, instead of just causing illness, changes the way people think, feel, and act without them even noticing. This opens up a world full of mysteries and historical facts that few know about, making us question what's possible. What once seemed distant and unlikely is closer than we think. And that's why we need to understand how biology, science, and technology work together, creating a curious and scary scenario. And this is just the beginning of what we'll discover. Did you know that zombies already exist in nature? That's right. It may sound strange, but it's an interesting fact. There's a fungus called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis that turns ants into real zombies. It enters their bodies, travels to their brains, and takes control. The ant then does exactly what the fungus wants. It climbs up a plant, bites the stem, and stays stuck there until it dies. After that, the fungus grows inside its body and spreads to other ants. Sounds like a movie scene, right? But it's real, and it happens every day in tropical forests. It's one of those curiosities that make us see nature in a whole new way. And it doesn't stop there. Other parasites also change animal behavior. One of the scariest examples is the rabies virus. It attacks the brains of mammals like dogs, cats, and even humans and changes how they act. The infected person or animal becomes aggressive, wants to bite, and loses fear. This is very similar to the idea of a zombie spreading infection by biting, isn't it? And here's another interesting fact. This isn't a movie invention. It's a well-known phenomenon studied for a long time. The rabies virus already shows how a microorganism can change someone's behavior in extreme ways. Now, imagine if a virus like this mutated, becoming even stronger, smarter, and able to control people for longer periods. It wouldn't be that hard to happen. Nature is always changing and trying new things. The ingredients are already here. Organisms that enter the body affect the brain and change behavior. There's only one piece missing to complete the puzzle, and that piece might be closer than we think. But to understand this better, it's important to first look at who's really in charge inside us. The brain. Now that we've seen that nature knows a thing or two about mind control, here comes an even more curious part. The human brain is much more fragile than it seems. It controls everything, thoughts, emotions, decisions. But just a small imbalance can change it all. There are neurological diseases so bizarre they seem like movie plots. Some people suffer from what's called Cotard syndrome, where a person truly believes they are dead. Yes, alive on the outside, but dead inside. Another curious case is encephalitis lethargica, an inflammation in the brain that can leave someone completely apathetic, as if disconnected from the world. These are just a few examples of how the brain can totally change who a person is. But it's not only diseases that cause this. There are drugs, and they don't even have to be illegal, that wipe out a person's will. A real example is scopolamine, a substance that, when used with bad intentions, can turn someone into a kind of conscious zombie. The person looks awake but can't say no. They obey commands without realizing it. Creepy, right? Now imagine, what if this was caused by a virus that spreads through the air or touch, making people lose empathy, become more aggressive, or obey orders without thinking? Sounds like an exaggeration, but there are already viruses that affect the brain. It's another one of those curiosities science studies that few people know about. What's truly scary is realizing that nothing new would have to be invented. We already have scattered pieces. Viruses that affect the brain, substances that erase willpower, and mental disorders that distort a person's reality. If all this came together somehow, through natural mutation or even a lab accident, we could have something very similar to a zombie virus. Not the movie kind with rotting bodies and moans, but living people walking around with their brains switched off from what's right or wrong. And the worst part, they wouldn't even know it. Can you imagine what would happen if this spread? Yeah. And with today's science, maybe this what if isn't that far off after all. If until now nature already seemed capable of creating zombies on its own. Just wait until you see what humans have been doing in laboratories. Modern genetic engineering is powerful, way more than most people imagine. Today, scientists can edit viruses, modify their DNA, combine pieces from different viruses, and even bring back extinct viruses like smallpox. Yes, this is actually happening. And it's not conspiracy theory, it's pure science. These tests aim to understand pandemics, sure, but they also open doors to risks that few people like to talk about. This is one of those historical facts we might look back on one day and say, how did no one see this coming? Now think about it. We already have viruses like rabies that change behavior. We have technologies like CRISPR, which allows gene editing with surgical precision. What would stop a scientist, good or bad intentioned, from turning that virus into something even more powerful, more resistant, easier to spread, able to target specific parts of the brain like areas linked to empathy, fear, or emotional control? It's a scary thought, but also an interesting fact about the modern world. We are getting closer to creating things nature hasn't even tried yet. And that raises a lot of mysteries because, deep down, no one knows where this could lead. Of course, it's not like someone will create a zombie tomorrow. But the pieces are on the table. Science already has the technology, viruses have shown what they can do. And humans? Well, humans have always had that curiosity to push beyond limits. Many of history's greatest discoveries started with someone asking, what if? But what if that question is asked in the wrong place, by someone with the right tools? We already have real cases of experiments that went too far and got out of control. What if the next step isn't accidental, but intentional? The right question might not be, will this happen? But rather, is the world ready for it? Now imagine this. You don't even need a virus that turns someone into a classic zombie, with gray skin and staggering walk. Just a virus that changes behavior. Something that makes people more aggressive, impulsive, lacking empathy or fear. Have you thought about the impact of that? The truth is, today's world is so connected and fast-paced that just a small shift in people's behavior could make everything spiral out of control. And we don't even need to imagine much. The COVID-19 pandemic showed us how fear, misinformation, and mass behavior can mess everything up. Now picture that with an extra touch of chaos, coming straight from the brain. It would be like an invisible virus that, instead of causing fever or cough, changes the way people think and act. Here's a curiosity. There are already reports of viral diseases that affect mood, sleep, and even the ability to feel empathy. So, it wouldn't be so far-fetched to imagine outbreaks where people start acting violently, confused, or completely out of the ordinary. And we're not talking about something cinematic, but a kind of silent psychological collapse that catches everyone by surprise. Chaos coming from inside, not outside. Now combine all that with overcrowded cities, social networks full of fake news, lack of emotional preparedness, and public systems already at their limit. You can see how something small could quickly grow, right? People don't need to become monsters for the world to feel like an apocalypse. Sometimes, it's enough for many to lose their sense, calm, and empathy. And that alone can cause more damage than any movie creature. It might sound like an exaggeration, but just look around to see signs of it. And if a simple virus has already shown it can change behavior, what else could it do? Scientists have already realized that the threat doesn't just come from viruses that cause coughs or fevers. The real danger might be from those that mess with our brains. And this is already happening. A curious and worrying example is the coronavirus itself, SARS-CoV-2. Many people who had COVID-19 reported brain fog, forgetfulness, confusion, extreme fatigue, and even mood changes. And this wasn't just during the illness, but for weeks or months afterward. Some cases even recorded personality changes. In other words, we have here a virus that doesn't kill directly but affects how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. And that completely changes the game. Science is beginning to understand that the next big risk may not come with screams or blood, but with silence, that kind of transformation that happens slowly. Imagine a virus that, instead of killing, reprograms. It leaves the person alive on the outside, but with a completely different mind inside. The person keeps walking, talking, working, but without empathy, without morals, without control. Sounds exaggerated. Well, there are already serious studies about this. What used to be just a mystery from horror movies has turned into a research line at universities and medical centers. Scientists are watching and worried. The point here is simple. Maybe the zombies we see so often on screen aren't walking corpses, but living people with corrupted brains. A kind of zombie that doesn't have to look scary because what's wrong is inside. And the most curious part, science has already found clues that this could happen. The real fear isn't of the reanimated dead. It's the fear of seeing what makes us human erased, little by little. And if we already have diseases, viruses, and technologies that can do part of this, what might be closer than we think? Science already has almost everything ready for a zombie apocalypse. All that's left is to press a button. It may sound like something out of a movie, but the truth is that science is getting closer and closer to creating something like what we see in zombie stories. Viruses, parasites, and even genetic engineering are already showing that controlling behavior can stop being fiction and become reality. Imagine a virus that, instead of just causing illness, changes the way people think, feel, and act, without them even noticing. This opens up a world full of mysteries and historical facts that few know about, making us question what's possible. What once seemed distant and unlikely is closer than we think. And that's why we need to understand how biology, science, and technology work together, creating a curious and scary scenario. And this is just the beginning of what we'll discover.